Good evening. Welcome to WFKT TV Channel 4 and St. John Valley Times/Fiddlehead Focus Candidates Night. I'm a little disappointed. We had 3 people who were invited. We've got 1 that shows up. One I haven't heard from. The second one just got out of work, or is getting out of work shortly, and it's been a long day for him. The 2 candidates who have not shown up, one is Robert Michaud, better known as Bob Michaud, retired attorney in Fort Kent, former member of the town council. The other candidate is Kevin Ford, an employee of Emera, Maine. He's a lineman for Emera. The third candidate, which we have here this evening, is Joey Willett, former town councilor. He's been off for a few years and decided that he's gonna try another run at it. I have approximately 14 or 15 questions, which this evening, chances are he's gonna get them all, unless his answers are way too long, and then if that happens, I'll cut them off. Not the questions, but him in talking. First of all, I'd like to welcome Joey for coming. He just got out of work, so what I was going to do, and I'm going to ask Joey to do it, is why are you running for the town council? I guess he can answer anything he wants. Joey, question is, why are you running for the town council?
Sure.
Again.
Okay, so I served as a town councilor for 3 years, and I ran for re-election, and I unfortunately didn't get re-elected. I lost by a small margin. There was a 3-way race, and I lost. And ever since then, I knew that I wanted to get back. From day one, when I moved back here 12 years ago or 13 years ago, I wanted to get involved with the town from day one, which I did. I've always been active in the community, and after again I lost the election, I actually it worked out perfectly. I went back to school for nursing. I got my nursing degree. Now I work at the hospital full time as a registered nurse, and but ever since that I left. It seems like the trend that I left is still going the same direction. The taxes are still going up, businesses are still closing, families are still leaving. And when I was on the town council, I had started a bunch of initiatives to get families back here, to cut some huge budgetary costs. And so I feel like those things were really kind of just hanging in midair, basically, and I really feel like I need to get back and finish what I started, and because it seems like all of that has vanished, and I'm pretty saddened about it. So I really want to get back and finish what I started, and look at some of our big budgetary items, and look at trying to find ways to get families back here and keep businesses open.
Okay, Joey, you said there are 3 reasons: taxes going up, family going away, and what was the third one?
Businesses, families, and taxes.
What do you plan on doing, or rather, how do you plan on lowering taxes?
Well, there's 2 ways. One is if we can increase the tax base, that will, if we keep if everything stays the same, and we can increase the tax base, then that will inevitably lower taxes. That's one way, which I already started. I started an initiative to get people back here. I had, like I mentioned the last time, I contacted our senators. And finally, after many phone calls, we were able to connect with NMDC, and then we found a gentleman out of Minnesota, and he had done years and years of research on how to reverse out migrations in rural communities. So that was my first plan, was to start working on out migration and increase our tax base to lower our taxes. So that's the biggest thing. The next biggest thing would be to look at our largest line items, our largest expense items, which I had started that as well, and that just kind of went to the wayside. I don't know what's going on with it, but one of our biggest expenses was is our trash, our waste, and I had started an initiative to start looking at ways we could lower that expense. I think we, on average, spend about $350,000 a year on that. That's just one among many budget items that I think we can look at to lower. And I just think $350,000 is a lot of money, and we can definitely lower that. There's a lot of other line items that we can look at to lower expenses on.
Okay, staying on trash.
Yep.
You said you started, why did you not continue?
Well, I was appointed by the council to lead that initiative as a town councillor, and when I didn't get voted on, I felt like there was really kind of no way I could be effective on this, basically not as a town representative, because I just feel historically things kind of get swept under the rug, and I felt like if I wasn't part of that, that's exactly what would happen, and it seems as though I haven't really heard much of it since, so I just decided we'd be best to kind of.
Joey, it seems to me if you
or you can go.
started that,
Yep.
you had a passion for it.
Yep.
Just because you did not get re-elected,
Yep.
you just threw it to the side.
No, I
Now,
didn't. Yep.
That to me is not one that follows through on the ideas that you have. I mean, just because you are not part of it doesn't mean that it's gonna die.
Sure.
On out migration, this gentleman, did that ever materialize? Did he ever come to Fort Kent? And if not, why?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So I spent, I would say, hundreds of hours trying to get all of that established, between phone calls with Senator's office, NMDC's meetings. So finally, we were able to identify a gentleman that was, had done tons of research on how to get people back to rural communities. And once we were ready to pull the trigger, we started an initiative to attract people to the university to get that started. Well, we couldn't get anybody to sign up for it. So it was really, really disappointing, because I thought that the community would have backed an idea like that, where so many families are leaving the community, and especially the business owners, the university, the hospital, the loggers. I know they're all struggling to keep workers, so I thought this is going to take off pretty quickly. I'm not sure if it was the presentation. I'm not really sure what happened, where the disconnect was, but we tried to get it out to the community as much as we could, and we didn't get enough people to sign up for it. So we had to basically put it on the back burner. I was hoping to do it, like start another initiative maybe the following year, but then I got off the town council, and the council didn't continue pursuing out migration after I left. It just died. So.
You mentioned businesses closing. What type of businesses do you think would be beneficial to the area? And how are you gonna get them here?
That's a great question. I think, and I've said this before, that the technology sector is huge, We have, or had, and I'm not sure if the program's still going, but we had a program called Information Security. Information security at the time, and maybe still today, and I think it is, but it's either one of the fastest, if not the fastest, growing job sector in the country. And the reason that is because there's so much cybercrime. And my idea when I was on the town council was to contact the university to work with them to try to get tech jobs out on Main Street. And my idea was information security. So to answer your question, number one would be tech jobs. I think would be extremely valuable because technology isn't going away, it's only getting bigger. So you said, how would we get them here? And that was the whole reason I worked with the senators to identify somebody who knew how to do that for us. And basically he was gonna come give a presentation to whoever wanted to listen. And my plan was to get with those people to formulate a plan or to follow his plan to get those workers here using his methods.
What's your plan on getting them here? I mean, do you have an incentive for them, or do you think there would be an incentive?
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's gonna just pack up from the Portland area
Right.
and move to Fort Kent because Joey Willett, who's on the town council, wants them up here.
No, you're absolutely right, and like I just said, that was the whole intent on identifying somebody who knows exactly how to attract people to rural communities. This one individual that we had contacted had over 20 years of research. That what he did is he followed all these rural communities, ones that were dying and ones that were attracting. So what he did is he kept all that data, and what he found was there were certain things that rural communities were doing to attract businesses. So my plan was to follow his guidance. So that's how I was gonna do it.
Okay, one of the big topics in the last year or so has been a high school, regional high school. With the decision having been made tentatively to be in Frenchville, do you favor that?
No,
Okay, why not?
because if we lose our school, we're gonna lose our community. It's that simple.
Excuse me, what was that
Yeah,
again?
I said if we lose our school, we lose our community.
Okay, with that said, Allagash closed her school
Yeah.
a number of years ago.
Yeah.
The community's still there.
Not really.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been told that you lose your school because population goes down.
Yeah, that's one reason.
Okay, population doesn't go down because you lost a school. The consolidation of 3 school systems right now, Madawaska, Frenchville, Senegat, and Fort Kent, to build a regional school is because the population has gone down. You need populations
Yeah.
to have schools.
Yeah.
And how would you go about trying to get the school in Fort Kent? Now, I think we've got to realize that as a town council themselves, it's a different ball of wax here.
Yeah.
You know, it's the school boards, the population. What would you do to get the regional school that is supposed to go to Frenchville in Fort Kent now?
Well, as a town councilor, I don't really know how much influence the town council has on those decisions. But I would definitely try to maintain a close relationship with the school boards to find out what their plan is on continuing with the plan of a regional school and what their thoughts are on trying to get the school in Fort Kent and working with them to see that through. So that's what I would do. I would definitely keep a close relationship with the school board.
While you were on the council prior, there were talk about doing away, that is closing the town skating rink.
Yep.
I believe at that time you favored trying to keep it open.
Yes.
Has your feeling changed any?
No?
No.
Oh, fine.
Closing it, or how's your feeling of giving it to somebody if they want it?
Yeah, we had, and that's the caveat. I think it's a value to this community. I think anything for children is a value. I get, have kids here, they use the skating rink. I used the skating rink when I was a kid. I skated on ponds when I was a kid. It's definitely something I think a lot of kids in this area can use. But again, I think there's obviously a balance. If I agree, if it's costing the town a ton of money to keep it open for 2 or 3 kids to skate there a year, that might be a little bit unreasonable. But to answer your question, yes, and while I was on the council, I did favor, I personally had reached out to Lonesome Pine Trails and Fort Kent Outdoor Center, and asked both facilities if they would consider adopting the skating rink. And I thought, my understanding was the Lonesome Pine Trails was sort of interested in that, but it never came to fruition.
Now, with that said, either the Outdoor Center or Lonesome Pine Trails, if the town is losing money with it, what incentive would you offer either one of those 2 places to take it over?
Yeah.
I mean,
The
they're losing money.
No, absolutely. For us, I think the rationale, and I thought it was a great rationale. I think one of the things we were looking at, number one, Lonesome Pine Trails already has employees, which, they already have dedicated employees for Lonesome Pine Trails, whereas we have a dedicated employee just for the skating rink. So I think the thought was, if Lonesome Pine Trails took on the skating rink, it wouldn't be as big of a cost to them as it is to us. So I think it would be easier for an entity like that to run the skating rink than it, not necessarily easier, but possibly cheaper. So the incentive would be to give them, I think we had discussed giving them everything. Giving them the rental equipment, the skates, the sharpeners, snowshoes, basically anything to incentivize them to take over the skating rink.
Except money, which the town is losing. But
Right.
anyway.
Right.
You say lower taxes. How are you gonna cut a budget and maintain the services?
Okay, I had explained that before, was that, I think one of the budgetary items I was looking at again was the trash. I don't think that's an unreasonable place to cut, and I don't think that's a service, that's actually an expense. That the town doesn't provide a service for trash. It's a complete expense line item. So if we cut the trash expense, there is no service lost. So that answers that question. The way things are going now, it's impossible for the town council to not tap into services. It's impossible. The taxes keep going up. And I mean, if the town council doesn't cut somewhere, I mean, the taxes, that's what will inevitably happen. Taxes will just continue to go up to support the services that we have. But if in 10 years from now we have 25% less population, how that doesn't balance at all. So I guess my point is that I don't necessarily want to cut services, but inevitably I would like to look at areas that, like trash and things first. And then, things like that. But our services haven't been growing in the past, since I've been here anyway. So. hopefully that answers
You
the
wanna
question.
cut out trash removal, or
No,
trash?
no, not cut it out, not cut it out at all, just look at the ways we, some of the ways we, some of the ways that we send our trash to Frenchville. There might be better ways that we can do it. And I just think, 350,000 on average we spend, I think we could shave some of that off.
Well, that amount of money that's being spent is not to send the trash to Frenchville.
I know that, yeah.
It's to send the trash from Frenchville to Coucil, which is in Canada.
Well, it's a weight, correct, yeah, yeah.
Okay, but anyway,
It's weight, yeah.
yeah. Would you keep cutting the budget? And I'm saying cutting. I don't like the word cutting, but would you keep the budget level for the sake of looking good? Therefore, in essence, cutting it because of due increases in wages, insurance expenses, fuel oil. I mean, this is all stuff that goes up and we have no control on it.
Yeah.
So if you maintain the same line item,
Mm.
you're essentially cutting the budget.
Right.
Now, is that something you're in favor of?
I mean, not increasing, I don't know, I don't know how to explain that. I mean, if everybody's expenses go up, if everybody's insurance, fuel, like if we had a bad snowstorm, if Tony's expense goes up a lot, and there's so many variables. I mean, to say that if the only thing that went up were expenses, and I left it there just to say taxes weren't going up, well, and we haven't identified anywhere else to cut, then yes, that's what I would do. I would just keep it there, but obviously that's not my intentions. My intentions are to look at the budget to see if there are expenses that we can look at. So, I don't know, I think that's a strange question, but,
Strange question, yes, but I mean,
there's so many variables to kind of pin it on one specific, that likely will never happen that way. I think, it's, the budget's super unique, and the likelihood that it would fall into that category is probably very rare, so, I don't know.
you mean keeping the budget level?
Just for the sake of saying that we're not raising taxes, that's irresponsible. I think I would be looking at the budget.
So there's two ways to go. Either you cut it and lose services, or increase it and maintain the services and then improve the services. It's not a quick.
Right,
not
that's a tough
trick
question. Yeah, it's a
but-
tough question. It's case by case scenario, and how do I know which, what if we need a new snow blower? That question's, there's so many variables, it's impossible to, it's really hard to answer that question.
Somebody's got a good phone. Now, the public works over the last few years have, when I say public works, I'm talking about the highway department, on their snow removal. Lately, my understanding is that they have changed their method of, well, not their method, but their procedure of cleaning the streets. Now, what do you feel, or how do you feel they should clean it? Not that I'm telling you, or asking you to tell the highway department how to do their work, because if I'd be the highway supervisor, I'd tell you, turn around, walk out the door, I'm the one that you hired to do it. But what would you like to see them do to better remove snow?
Well, Well, first
And I realize
yeah.
you're gonna say that's a loaded question, but
No, it is.
it's a common question.
It
that-
is, and it is, and it's a good question, and I think, I think it's actually the number one question I used to get as a town councilor. People used to call me all the time and say, what's going on with the snow? What's going on? Like day one, that was like the first thing I was, calling about, But the only thing that I think I would change personally, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, is just the times at which they plow. That's it. I mean, otherwise, I think they do a good job plowing. I think if we could shift a little bit of the timing, that's really for me have the biggest impact, is the timing of the plowing. And I get it. We have snowstorms during the midnight hours and all hours of the day, so I get it. It's difficult to kind of gauge that. But I'll just give you one example. So I work 12-hour shifts, and one morning I was headed to work, and the snow blower was right on Station Hill. So I had to take a picture of the plow and sent it to my supervisor and said, I'll be, but it was right at the time where all the Northern Maine Medical Center, I guess, employees were headed for that shift. So I guess for me, it's like, it's kind of a sensitive topic, but I think for me, that would be the biggest thing, is to kind of try to gauge it when the biggest traffic times are, and to maybe kind of work around that. But again, I know that's a tough thing to do, and I think overall they do a good job with snow removal, so.
Staying on the snow removal topic, you think the town highway department should cease going up to bid on the east end of town, or the east section of town, to a contractor and do it all?
That's another tough question. I'll explain why. One is that I guess the biggest thing is we'd have to determine is if we would keep that as an in-house plow route. We would just have to determine, is it or is it not more expensive than contracting? I mean, really, that's the bottom line. So to answer that question, I don't know. I'd have to see whether or not it's cost effective, and if it is, then we could keep that as an in-house route. But if it's not cost effective, then no.
Now, you hit on snow removal, changing the hours. My understanding is that the normal working day is, say, 7 to 4, 7 to 5, or 7 to 12 during the day. If you switch that, and that's straight time, if you switch that to nighttime, your highway budget most likely is gonna go up, because your employees are working outside of their regular hours, therefore it's time and a half.
Yeah.
Sunday may be double time, or whatever. I mean, you're not gonna save money there, or do you think they will?
And that's the question. I think, I'm not sure why we haven't taken more of a strategic approach, to look at the different options. I mean, I know that I never did, and as a counselor, I don't think, other than looking at the budget itself when the department head submitted the budget. But basically, we rely on the department head to kind of explain to us what his budget is, and kind of what the shortfalls are and everything like that. But we never really looked at as far as when I was in the council, I can say that we didn't look at different ways, different options and what the costs were. So what I'd like to do is just actually see what the costs are of changing the schedule around a little bit, tweaking it. And obviously, if it's a huge expense, then I don't think it possibly wouldn't be worth it to change it just a little bit. But if we could shift an hour on each side and it didn't cost anything extra, then that might be something worth considering.
Recreational center. You mentioned a while ago that you feel that the Fort Kent area should have more things for families to do. Do you think the town should have a recreational center where they could use it all year round?
I mean, obviously, it would be nice. I think, as you know, a recreation center would be nice. And I've had, when I was on the town council, I know a lot of people had approached me and asked me about that. And I had brought it to a meeting just to kind of talk about it a little bit. We discussed it, and and obviously the biggest obstacle is cost, number one. You know, whether or not we could afford it is one thing. And even if we could afford it, in other words, if a recreation center, let's just throw a number out there, was $1 million to build it, then the next thing is the expense to run it. So, and then if, you know, so you run into some major expenses. So if our town was, you know, had a good budget, we had a you know, really good nest, not a nest egg, but a huge savings account, and we could afford it, and it was, and our town was booming and people were moving here, I think it would be much more feasible. But to build a recreation center when the trend is people are hightailing out of here, I don't think is a safe investment. If at some point we saw the trend turning around, and we could bank on the increase in the population and the increase in the tax base to pay for something like that, and it wasn't gonna increase taxes, and we could find ways to pay for it, you know, either through grants or fundraisers or endowments, things like that, maybe that could be a possibility. But right now, I think it would be way too expensive.
I got another question for you here that's gonna make your hair curl.
Okay.
You say the town, if they had a savings account. If they have a savings account, they'd probably cut the budget as far as cut the taxes. The town does have monies in reserves for certain accounts that they use, I'm sure you're aware of, to match grant money that they get. Now, if they use all this up and they need to replace a sewer line or a water line, and they get the grant money and they need 30% matching funds, where do you think that money's gonna come from?
Right.
The
Yeah.
taxes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if it's, right now where our taxes are at, we can't go any further. The taxes are out of control.
Okay, I'm gonna ask if anybody from the audience has a question.
Do I ask any?
Well, it ain't gonna be asking me because I'm not running for any office.
I'm gonna say something there. You guys,
No, I need a question, not a statement there.
I wanted to say something.
No. Listen, you wanna say something, you come up here and run for the town council. It's a question I want,
What's that again?
it's a question
Yeah, I
from the
know.
audience.
I know.
Jim?
He said something about the new school there. Would you, if it being for Kent, would you want a new school or would you repair your old one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I you know, at the end of the day, I think that personally, I think it would be much cheaper to repair the old school. I mean, really, you know, I think they said it was gonna cost $13 million to renovate just the bare bones of it. Well, let's take another 10 million, that's 23 million, that's only, you know, let's say 23, that's 77% less than 100 million, you know, so, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it would be much cheaper to renovate our school. You know, so if I had the choice, I would say renovate our existing school, if we could get the funding. If we could talk to our governor and the DOE and say, listen, this whole Valley Unified's not working out, could we just have 20 million of it and let's renovate our school? I think that would be great. But that's the deal, the
Okay,
DOE,
a
so.
follow-up question on that.
Uh-oh.
13 million to rebuild, I'm gonna call it rebuild, community high school in Fort Kent. And you still don't have any vocational programs, other than what's in Frenchville now.
Right.
So,
Well, that's what I was saying, if,
what are you gonna do about the technology that you want?
no,
about
that's
the,
what, that's what I'm
truck
saying.
driving courses?
That's what I'm saying, if the state would grant us an additional 10 million, then we can invest that into programming. So,
Okay.
that's it.
Any other questions?
I was late, and I'm not sure if this was asked in the beginning, and if it was, just never mind. But I'd like to ask Joey his reason for running for council at this time, and what goals he has for being on the council if he is elected a term.
Okay, with that, Dr. Bouchard, that's gonna be your closing statement, so to speak.
Okay.
This is where you fluff your feathers and tell everybody what you're gonna do.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I talked a little bit, Dr. Bouchard, before you showed up about why I wanted to run again, but I'll just kind of really quickly just say, you know, obviously I served with you on the town council, and there were a lot of things that I kind of wanted to accomplish while I was there, and I never got a chance to finish it. Like, I think, you know, I started the project with the recycling, and then the out-migration with NMDC, and those were just two projects. But I really felt the need to get back and try to get back into those types of projects. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that I just feel the trend is continuing, like out-migration, people are leaving, taxes are going up. And I just don't hear a lot. I think that there's been a shift over the past, let's say 40 years, that I just haven't heard a lot from the municipal side. And I just want to have the municipality a little more engaged in identifying what is happening from a economic perspective, because we have a lot of data now that we can identify, and I think we have the potential to help the community turn things around. Because it's like the community's like a three-legged stool, where we have the municipality, we have the businesses, and we have the community members. And I think without a stronger involvement with the municipality, I think that three-legged stool gets a little bit shaky. So I just would like to see more of an engagement with the municipality. And that's one of the big reasons I want to get back, and I want to try to engage the councilors to say, let's kind of get more serious about how other towns have been successful in reversing out migration and getting businesses back, and, you know, kind of looking at ways we can reduce taxes and all, you know, and all kinds of other things, but those, just to name a few. So that's why I wanted to get back on, to get more engaged with the community. And my goals, if I get back on to the town council, my goals are, number one, to be more engaged with the council, for the council to be more engaged in the community, to partner with some of the big organizations within the town, either the hospital, the university, some of the big groups in towns like Lions Club, the KC, to just partner with them and to possibly get a plan developed and to start working completely as a community toward one major goal, or a few major goals. Let's say 3 major goals, one being out-migration, what we can do as a community together to try to turn that around. And then number two, I think another big goal of mine would be to try to figure out how we can do what's called a market analysis. And there are firms out there that will do an analysis to determine where we're lacking, where we are doing good at, where we can the things we can capitalize on. So it'll give us an idea of where we can focus our other goals or our objectives in meeting the goal of reversing out migration, and possibly what sectors we could get in here, like technology sectors. You know, there's all kinds of different sectors we could look at. Obviously, you know, the logging industry I know is struggling to find workers. To maybe continue to look at training for the logging industry. I know Irving does invest in that already. They do I think they invest in logging classes and things like that, but to continue to try to attract people to fill those positions. But anyway, so those are my goals, would be to just be more engaged in the community and to try to find goals we can work on as a council and share those goals amongst the big organizations and work together to try to meet those goals.
Okay. Thank you, Joey. From what I understand and what you've indicated, you're willing to work with the council for the benefit of the town.
Yep.
And I take it you don't have an agenda or something, some axe to grind or something?
No.
Which is a good idea. What I'd like to say now, we're gonna wrap this up here because he's been on for 45 minutes. There are 3 people running for town council. Joey Willett, whom you've seen here this evening. Robert Michaud, as I mentioned before, who's a retired attorney. And Kevin Plord, who works for the mayor. The elections will be, unless the state tells us otherwise, March 23rd, which is this coming Monday, at the town office in Fort Kent, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., I believe it is, or at least from 9 to 5. I'm giving you 2 hours, but I'm shortening the day there, from 9 to 5, so get in here. Come vote, and as I always say, if you don't vote, don't complain. Because your way of telling the people what you want is in the ballot box, not at McDonald's. And I'm not making an ad for McDonald's. But thank you, and I'd like to thank Channel 4 for making this possible, both live and it will be recorded and played between now and Monday the 23rd. Thank you, Charles Pelletier, Channel 4.
Thank you.